Who sent the email? That was the question that started it all, but by the time the exchange was over, it had turned into something much bigger, something that left the entire room tense, the answers unclear, and one of the most powerful figures in the room struggling to keep control of his own story. Because what looked like a routine line of questioning quickly turned into a moment where every response created more confusion than clarity, and every attempt to explain only made things worse. That IT began calmly.
Mr. Fan.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director Patel. In a local situation in Maryville, Indiana, within my district, I have a high-intensity drug trafficking area, HIDA, which receives federal funding. That works with the local law enforcement. We are the crossroads of America near Chicago. The drugs that you're talking about are transported through those areas all the time. With these budget cuts, can you talk about how those HIDA and agencies will be funded?
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. It's like any other successful mission set that we have at the FBI. And HIDA, I worked on as a terrorism prosecutor as myself. Extremely critical because, like some of the other situations across the country, that region has been recognized, unfortunately, because of the high-intensity drug flow. In order to countermand it, we have to keep these task forces open, up and running, and funded. But in order to do that, we can't just flood it only with federal funds and federal personnel committed to working with our state and local partners, because that's what makes HIDA successful. My experience in HIDA wasn't in your district, but down in the Southern District of Florida, and I can't imagine it being too different in terms of how we proceed and how to make that successful.
Okay. My next question is, just recently, you had a visit to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Just please tell me how that cyber tip line and how that program's future looks with these $500 million cuts.
We actually partner wonderfully with NCMEC, and we've committed to allowing our FBI employees to remain there no matter what. We will find a way to fill that mission set, even if, even under the most austere of budget cuts, because what they do is exceptional. If people don't know, they need to go there and see it. It's right in Arlington, Virginia. They find missing children from 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, and they provide treatment to those that have been abused.
Okay.
And so you have my commitment, sir, that we'll do it.
I appreciate that. And according to the domestic terrorism operations sections, the internal tagging system used to track domestic terrorism investigations was eliminated, and the staff of 16 was reduced. Can you tell me that future and where you hold that program?
Sir, if I may, can I get back to you on that in writing, because I'm not familiar with that off my
Okay.
head.
Then in your written testimony, you had talked about cybersecurity. I'm going to tie two things together. The FBI agents, are they still currently at the end of every week emailing the 5 things that they've accomplished?
I'm glad you raised that point, sir. We never did that.
Okay.
I stopped
The
that.
FBI agents were never asked to put in their goals in which they accomplished?
The,
The reason why I say that is because I had a specific conversation at a retirement party of a chief from an agent who expressed to me that after he had chased a car down 8094 who had stabbed a family member, and he left his home and was able to prevent that individual from killing someone else because it was cross state lines, that he had to go back, and then that next day was told he had to fill out his emails of what he accomplished.
that email was sent across government agencies.
So it was sent to the FBI.
It was sent to.
So you just said it was never sent to the FBI. So was it or was it not?
It was sent to the FBI. I, as the director of the FBI, said we are not.
Who sent it?
We are not responding to it. It came from a general account at the department.
Okay, so then my next question is, that information that my FBI agent in my district sent to that agency, how is that information protected?
I'm sorry. Are you saying the agent responded to that email?
Are you saying they did not?
I told the workforce not to.
But you just told me that they received the email.
We did.
So without this, let's just assume that they did. Where did that information go and how is it protected?
That information would have only been sent to their immediate supervisor, and every supervisor in the Bureau was told if they received any such information, it is not to be actioned in any way.
So what happened with that information with the supervisors?
I don't know. Well, I'll have to get back to you on that, if any was collected, but if it was,
So you said that the FBI, that a different agency sent that email. What was that agency?
it came from the Department of Justice.
Okay. And those emails never went back to the Department of Justice who requested it?
No, sir.
Okay. And you're 100% confident of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The information that the supervisors had from those agents, where did that go?
That should not have been transmitted anywhere. We got on top of it fast enough where I believe, and
Because
I'll
you
double
thought
check.
it was wrong?
I thought
Why did you prevent it?
because the operational mandate that we have at the Bureau, in my opinion, prohibited the public disclosure of that information across our media.
So to be perfectly clear, the Department of Justice got it wrong.
I'm not speaking for the Department of Justice, as
But
I
you
said.
are saying that that directive was in complete conflict of what your procedures and processes are.
My procedures and processes are under the Department of Justice. I'm saying as a subordinate of the Department of Justice, that's where the email came from. I don't know where it came from on top of them.
But your directive was to make sure that the Department of Justice did not get the FBI information,
That no one got it.
except the supervisors. Why would they
If-
request it if they would never get it?
Well, the supervisors were told to stand down. What I'm trying to say is, when that email came in, we acted as fast as we could, I think the same day, to say we are not in a position to do that. Everybody hit pause till we figure out what to do. And the end result was, we at the FBI are not complying with that request to publicly do so. And we told agents that if you feel the need to express that information to your supervisors, only do so on the classified system.
Okay. The information that I received, that personal conversation that I had, that agent didn't seem like he felt the need. He felt it was a directive. I thank you for your forthcoming. I look forward to working with you. The purpose of me bringing up this questioning was to make sure that that information is secure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you
I'll
very
double
much.
check.
Mr. Moore.
I yield back.
Congressman Frank Mrvan wasn't raising his voice. He wasn't interrupting. He simply asked a straightforward question about an email that, according to reports, had been sent across government agencies, including the FBI. On the surface, it sounded almost administrative, like a routine internal communication. But the way he asked it hinted that there was more beneath the surface. And within seconds, it became clear that there was. Across from him sat Kash Patel, who at first seemed confident in his response. He denied it, said the FBI never operated that way, said agents were never asked to send in reports detailing what they had accomplished each week. It was a firm denial, delivered like someone who believed the issue was already settled. But that confidence didn't last long, because Mrvan didn't move on. He didn't accept the answer. He simply repeated the core issue, this time with more detail, referencing first-hand accounts, conversations with agents who said they had received exactly that kind of directive. And that's when everything shifted, because suddenly, the story changed. Patel acknowledged that yes, an email had been sent. Yes, it had reached the FBI. But then came the pivot. It didn't come from the FBI, he said. It came from the Department of Justice. And just like that, what started as a denial turned into an admission, but not a full one. It was partial, careful, and filled with qualifiers. The kind of answer that tries to close one door while quietly opening another. But that wasn't the whole story, and Mrvan knew it, because the real issue wasn't just whether the email existed. It was what it asked for and what that meant. These weren't ordinary employees being asked for weekly updates. These were FBI agents, people working on active investigations, some involving domestic threats, others tied to national security. If they were being asked to report their activities, even in a basic format, that raised a serious question. Where was that information going? Who was collecting it? And how was it being protected? That's where the tension in the room began to rise. Patel tried to regain control by explaining that he had acted quickly. He said he told the workforce not to respond, that supervisors were instructed to stand down, that the FBI would not comply with the request. On paper, that sounds decisive, even responsible. But the more he explained, the more gaps started to appear. Because when Mrvan asked the obvious follow-up, what happened to any information that may have already been sent, the answer wasn't clear. In fact, it wasn't really an answer at all. Patel said he didn't know, said he would have to get back to them, suggested that if any information had been collected, it should not have been transmitted anywhere else. But should not have been isn't the same as was not. And that distinction is where the entire exchange started to unravel. Because in a system built on precision, accountability, and strict handling of sensitive data, uncertainty like that isn't just uncomfortable. It's alarming, and Mrvan didn't need to raise his voice to make that point. He just kept asking. He asked where the data went. He asked how it was protected. He asked whether the Department of Justice ever received any of it. And each time, Patel's answers became less certain, more cautious, more dependent on phrases like, "I believe," and "I'll have to follow up." It was a subtle shift, but an important one. Because confidence was being replaced with hesitation, and clarity was being replaced with ambiguity. Then came the moment that changed everything. Mrvan asked a question that seemed simple on the surface, but carried enormous weight underneath. He essentially asked whether the Department of Justice had gotten it wrong. It was a direct question, but it came with no safe answer. Because if Patel said yes, he would be placing blame on the very department the FBI operates under. And if he said no, then he would be admitting that the FBI had ignored or resisted a directive from its own leadership structure. For a moment, everything slowed down. Patel hesitated. Not dramatically, not loudly, but just enough for everyone in the room to notice. Because in that pause, you could see the calculation happening. Every possible answer carried consequences. Every path led to a problem. And that's what made the moment so powerful. It wasn't about what he said next. It was about the fact that he couldn't say it easily. He eventually responded in a way that avoided directly answering the question, emphasizing his position within the hierarchy, pointing out that the procedures he follows are under the Department of Justice. It was careful, measured, and designed to avoid assigning blame. But in doing so, it left the core issue unresolved. And that's when the focus shifted again, because now the question wasn't just who sent the email. It was what happens when different parts of the same system aren't aligned. When one agency sends a directive and another refuses to follow it. When instructions are issued but not tracked. When data may be collected but no one can say for certain where it ended up. That's not just a communication problem. That's a breakdown. From the outside, it might seem like a technical issue, something that can be fixed with better coordination or clearer guidelines. But inside a system that handles sensitive investigations, classified material, and national security threats, those kinds of gaps carry serious implications. Because information isn't just data, it's leverage, it's evidence, it's protection. And if it's not handled correctly, the consequences aren't theoretical, they're real. What made this exchange stand out wasn't just the content of the questions. It was the way they were asked. Mrvan didn't rush. He didn't try to overwhelm. He simply stayed focused, kept the conversation grounded, and allowed the inconsistencies to reveal themselves. And by doing that, he created a situation where the answers spoke louder than the questions. Meanwhile, Patel's responses, while measured, began to show a pattern. A reliance on deferring details. A tendency to promise follow-ups instead of providing immediate clarity. Now, to be fair, in large bureaucratic systems, it's not unusual for officials to need time to verify information. That's part of maintaining accuracy. But in moments like this, where the issue involves internal directives and potential data exposure, the expectation is different. The expectation is that leadership knows where things stand. And when that certainty isn't there, people notice. Observers have pointed out that this kind of response pattern can raise concerns about preparedness. Not necessarily intent, but readiness. Because when key questions about internal operations lead to uncertainty, it creates doubt about how well those operations are being managed. And in a system where trust is essential, even small cracks can have a big impact. But beyond the individuals involved, this moment highlighted something bigger. IT showed how fragile coordination can be, even at the highest levels. How quickly a simple directive can turn into a point of conflict. And how difficult it can be to maintain clarity when multiple agencies, each with their own protocols and priorities, are involved in the same process. And that brings us back to the original question. Who sent the email? On paper, the answer seems to be that it came from the Department of Justice. But even that answer isn't as clear as it sounds. Because knowing which department it came from doesn't explain who within that department initiated it. It doesn't explain why it was sent in that format. And it doesn't explain how it was supposed to be handled once it reached its recipients. In other words, it answers the surface question but leaves the deeper ones untouched. And that's why moments like this matter, because they don't just reveal what we know. They reveal what we don't. They show where systems work and where they don't. They highlight the difference between policy and practice, between intention and execution. And most importantly, they remind everyone watching that accountability isn't just about having answers. It's about being able to provide them when it matters most. As the exchange came to a close, the tone shifted slightly. The tension eased, the questions slowed, and the conversation moved on. But the impact of what had just happened didn't disappear. It lingered, not because of any single statement, but because of the pattern that had emerged. A question asked, an answer given, a contradiction revealed, and a conclusion that never fully came together. That's what made it memorable. Not drama, not volume, but uncertainty. The kind that stays with you, the kind that makes you think, the kind that raises more questions than it answers. Because in the end, this wasn't just about an email. It was about control, communication, and confidence in the systems that are supposed to operate with precision. It was about whether those systems can account for their own actions, and whether the people leading them are prepared to explain those actions when asked. And if they can't, even for a moment, that silence says more than any answer ever could. The next time you hear a simple question like, "Who sent it?" remember what it can uncover. Because sometimes, the simplest questions are the ones that reveal the most. They cut through complexity, bypass rehearsed responses, and get straight to the core of what matters. And in a world where information moves fast and accountability can feel distant, those questions aren't just important. They're necessary. That if you found this breakdown insightful and want more deep dives into moments like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss what's really happening behind the headlines. Drop a like if you think transparency matters, and let me know in the comments what you think really happened here. And as always, stay curious, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next video on the channel.